the cosmic question. For generations, we have gazed at the stars with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The question has haunted us, whispered in the dark corners of our minds. Are we alone? But what if the question we've been asking is the wrong one? What if the beings we call aliens are not extraterrestrial visitors from another galaxy, but something far more ancient, far more sinister, and far more familiar? This is not a story about little green men in flying saucers. It's a journey into the heart of a cosmic mystery that has been unfolding since the dawn of creation. We will cross the chasm between science and scripture, between government secrecy and supernatural reality. And by the end, you may find that the answer to the alien question has been hidden in plain sight all along. The modern UFO phenomenon, with its tic-tacs and blurry videos, feels like a new chapter in human history. But a deeper look at ancient texts, including the Bible, reveals a shocking possibility that the aliens are not a new phenomenon at all. They are, in fact, the same malevolent spiritual entities that have been interacting with humanity for millennia, demons. This idea, so provocative it has been a staple of fringe discussions for decades, is now being taken more seriously than ever. Why? Because the very institutions that once ridiculed this concept are now, ironically, providing the evidence. The US government's recent disclosures, the declassification of UFO videos, the establishment of the UAP task force, the congressional hearings, are not, as many believe, an act of transparency. They are a carefully orchestrated narrative designed to prepare us for a coming deception. To understand this, we must first look to the Bible, not as a book of fairy tales, but as an ancient document that provides a supernatural worldview of our reality. A worldview that Dr. Michael Heiser so brilliantly articulated in his work on the unseen realm. He taught us to read the Bible on its own terms, to see the spiritual beings and cosmic geography that the biblical authors took for granted. And when you read it that way, the pieces of the alien-demon puzzle begin to fall into place. The biblical backdrop, the unseen realm. The Bible doesn't mention aliens or UFOs in a modern sense, but it paints a detailed picture of a spiritual realm teeming with non-human intelligences. We are not just dealing with God and humans. We have angels, cherubim, seraphim, and most importantly for our discussion, fallen divine beings. Genesis chapter 6 is our starting point. Verse 4 says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown." Who are these sons of God? The Hebrew phrase, Bunei Elohim, is used throughout the Old Testament to refer to divine beings, members of God's divine council. This isn't some fringe interpretation. It's a core understanding of biblical cosmology. These are not human men or the sons of Seth, as some later traditions have suggested. The text makes it clear. These are supernatural beings who rebelled against God's order. They descended, took human women as wives, and produced a hybrid corrupted lineage, the Nephilim. This act was so egregious, so far outside the divine plan, that it was one of the primary reasons for the Great Flood. It was a cosmic catastrophe. And the judgment on these rebellious sons of God is detailed in other texts, like 2 Peter 2:4, which says, "For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them into hell, and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness, to be kept until the judgment," and Jude 1:6, which adds, "And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling. He is kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day." These are not just metaphors. They describe a specific group of fallen divine beings who committed a unique sin and are now imprisoned. They are not the same as Satan and the demons who remained in the spiritual realm, still able to roam and influence the world. The Nephilim, the offspring of this illicit union, were a physical manifestation of this cosmic rebellion on Earth. And this is where the connection to the modern phenomenon begins. The alien narrative, with its tales of abductions, hybrid breeding programs, and genetic manipulation, mirrors the very actions described in Genesis 6. The goal appears to be the same: the corruption of humanity and the defilement of God's creation. The abduction phenomenon is not benign. Eyewitness accounts, often from people who have no prior interest in the paranormal, consistently describe terrifying, often sexually invasive procedures. They speak of a sense of dread, of a spiritual oppression. These experiences are not the benevolent visits of space brothers. They are consistent with demonic encounters, beings that are hostile to humanity and seek to harm and deceive. The government's role: a history of denial and a new deception. For decades, the official stance of the U.S. government on UFOs was one of ridicule and denial. The term unidentified flying object was coined by the U.S. Air Force, which ran a series of investigations. Most famously, Project Blue Book, from 1952 to 1969. They investigated over 12,000 sightings, officially concluding that most were misidentifications of natural phenomena or conventional aircraft. But even they admitted that about 701 cases remained unidentified. This was the public face. The private face was a different story. The CIA, in 1953, convened the Robertson Panel, which recommended a program of debunking and public ridicule to reduce public interest in UFOs. The goal wasn't just to dismiss the sightings, it was to actively sow disinformation. They recognized that the phenomenon, whatever its source, had the potential to cause widespread panic and social disruption. This era of denial gave us some of the most famous examples of government cover-ups. The Roswell incident, 1947. A flying disc allegedly crashed in New Mexico. The Army Air Forces initially issued a press release stating they had recovered a flying disc. Within hours, they retracted the statement, claiming the debris was from a weather balloon. The infamous swamp gas explanation was born. The Rendlesham Forest incident, 1980, U.S. Air Force personnel at a military base in England witnessed a strange glowing object in a forest. They described a metallic object with hieroglyphic-like symbols. The deputy base commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, even made an official audio recording of his team's investigation. The official explanation was that the lights were from a nearby lighthouse. This was an obvious falsehood, as the lighthouse's light was not consistent with the witnesses' reports. These well-known examples and countless others solidified the public's belief in a government cover-up. But something has changed. In the last few years, the government's narrative has shifted dramatically. The era of denial is over. The era of disclosure has begun. We are now seeing the declassification of videos, the gimbal and tic-tac videos, among others, showing objects performing maneuvers that defy all known conventional physics. We have former military and intelligence officials like Luis Elizondo, who once ran the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, speaking openly about these unidentified anomalous phenomena. We have congressional hearings where officials admit, on the record, that these objects are real and pose a national security threat. But why the sudden change? Why are they now showing us what they have hidden for over 70 years? This is where the lesser-known facts and the deeper deception come into play. The government's new narrative is not about revealing the truth, it's about controlling it. They are preparing the public for a new reality. A reality where these beings are seen as a threat or as extraterrestrial visitors, but not as the demonic entities they are. Think about the terminology. They have moved from unidentified flying object to unidentified anomalous phenomena. Why? Because it allows them to move the conversation away from flying objects and into the broader realm of phenomena, which can include spiritual or interdimensional realities. They can now acknowledge the reality of the phenomenon without having to admit its true source. This controlled disclosure allows them to frame the narrative. It prepares us to accept a reality where these beings exist, but to see them through a secular, scientific lens. They are preparing us to believe a lie, secular information, and the coming deception. The secular world, in its attempt to rationalize these phenomena, has also inadvertently provided evidence for the spiritual nature of these beings, the interdimensional hypothesis. Many secular researchers, including Jacques Vallée, a pioneer in ufology, have concluded that the evidence points away from the idea of physical extraterrestrial visitors from other planets. The erratic nature of the sightings, the ability of these objects to appear and disappear, the trickster quality of their interactions, and the profound psychological effects on witnesses, all of this points to a non-physical, perhaps interdimensional source. This theory, which is gaining traction in the scientific community, aligns perfectly with the biblical concept of a spiritual realm. These beings are not traveling across vast distances in space. They are already here, in another dimension, breaking through into ours. The connection to the occult. A shocking number of UFO abduction accounts are inextricably linked to occult practices. Witnesses often describe being told by aliens to perform certain rituals, to channel information, or to engage in practices that are fundamentally occultic. The aliens often present themselves as guides or saviors, but their message is always anti-Christian and anti-biblical. This is not a coincidence. It is a hallmark of demonic activity, as 1 Timothy 4:1 warns. Now the Spirit expressly says that in later times some will depart from the faith. By devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teachings of demons, the government's carefully orchestrated disclosure is the final piece of this puzzle. By now showing us the reality of these UAPs, they are setting the stage for a grand deception. What will happen when these beings, now validated by our own governments, finally make a public appearance? They will likely present themselves as our creators or saviors. They will offer advanced technology, solutions to our planetary problems, and a new age of enlightenment. And they will present a new all-encompassing religion, a global spirituality that unites all people, but one that is antithetical to the truth of the gospel. This is the great end-times deception that the Bible warns about. 2 Thessalonians 2:9-10 speaks of the lawless one. The coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan, with all power and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. The false signs and wonders could very well be the very phenomena we are now seeing. The truth in a world of lies. We have been conditioned to see a simple dichotomy. Either we are alone or we are not. But the biblical worldview and the emerging secular evidence reveals a third, more terrifying option. We are not alone, but the others are not what they seem. They are a corrupted, rebellious spiritual intelligence that has been at war with humanity for millennia. The government's so-called disclosure is not a benevolent act. It is a carefully managed narrative to prepare us to receive these beings. The stage is being set for a final global deception, and the enemy will use every tool at his disposal, including the very governments of this world, to lead humanity astray. So, how do we respond to this? We must not fall for the lie. We must anchor ourselves in the truth of Scripture. We must understand that the real battle is not for outer space, but for the unseen realm. It is a spiritual battle for the hearts and minds of humanity. The aliens are not from another galaxy. They are from a spiritual dimension that has intersected with ours since the beginning. They are not our saviors. They are the same demonic forces that have sought to destroy humanity since the fall. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. The government's revelations are not a final truth, but a prologue to the ultimate lie. We must be sober and vigilant. We must understand that we are in a cosmic battle, and the very things we are told to believe by our own governments are part of the enemy's master plan. The truth is stranger than fiction, and the cosmic question of are we alone has been answered. But the answer is more terrifying than any science fiction story. It is a story of angels, demons, and a spiritual war for the soul of humanity. And that story, far from being over, is just beginning. If this video opened your eyes to a third option, then take a second to like, or perhaps go a little further and subscribe. It would help us spread the word. Share this with someone who needs it, and drop a comment whether you support aliens, demons, or the government. I would love to have a respectful, engaging conversation with you. Till next time, stay grounded, stay watchful, stay in the Word. Thanks for watching.